So the OPPO Find X9 Ultra is finally official, and not only that, it's actually going global, including, yes, here in Europe. F me running. Now, as you'll know if you've seen my review, I absolutely spaffed myself silly all over the Find X9 Pro. Definitely one of the best smartphones you can buy right now. But the Ultra clambers to even more ridiculous heights thanks to the slightly mental camera hardware. In anime terms, it's the Akira of camera smartphones. If it was booze, it'd be Bollinger, and in 1980s biscuit terms, it's absolutely an orange club. Now, I've been playing with the OPPO Find X9 Ultra for a few weeks now, and this past week I've had my SIM stuffed in there, using it as my full-time smartphone. And so here's my Find X9 Ultra review, and for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do subscribe, ding that little notifications bell. Cheers! Now, as with basically all Ultra smartphones, the Find X9 Ultra is absolutely ruddy enormous. This thing is a 6.8-inch monolith. It's a proper palm stretcher, though with reasonably skinny bezels surrounding that screen at least. And clearly lots of heavy text stuffed inside of here as well, as it weighs a not inconsiderable 236 grams. That's more than some full-sized foldable phones. But mercifully, somehow it doesn't feel imbalanced, it doesn't feel particularly top-heavy. But you'll want to be careful, because if you're reclining in bed or on the sofa, holding this thing up over your head, doing a bit of browsing or whatever, and happens to slip out of your grasp, you'll probably break your face. You've got a completely flat screen here, not even a subtle hint of curvature at those edges. And of course, the metal frame is also completely flat, while the corners are only ever so slightly rounded. So the hand feel not fantastic, about the same as Samsung's S26 Ultra. You got that metal frame, and then flip around to the rear end, and I've got the Tundra Umber. It's the f***ing black one, alright? You got this soft touch finish, and apparently that design inspired by Hasselblad's X2D camera. Or alternatively, you can also grab the Find X9 Ultra in a now apparently obligatory orange colour, and that one's got a brushed matte design constructed from aircraft grade fibre. Now, like basically all Ultra smartphones, the Find X9 Ultra is all about ridiculously over-the-top camera tech. So perhaps unsurprisingly, the old camera bump here covers basically half of that back end. It's the kind of protrusion that even Dirk Diggler would be proud of. But I am rather glad for this enormous ruddy mound in truth, as it doubles nicely as a handy finger shelf, thus making one-handed use of the Find X9 Ultra at least feasible. That's certainly helped along by that soft touch back as well, which does add a nice bit of grip. And the Find X9 Ultra didn't feel quite as ridiculously chunky as some of its rivals like the Xiaomi 17 Ultra. I could actually just about squeeze this behemoth into my skinniest jeans without completely cutting off the blood supply to my legs. And I've got to say, I do rather like the design, which certainly stands out from the crowd as well. I really enjoy the wee splashes of orange, like here on the camera button, and that rather subtle orange ring that encircles the camera bump as well. And the Find X9 Ultra, reasonably rugged bugger as well. You've got, I believe it's Victus 2 Gorilla Glass up front, plus a pre-installed screen protector, but sadly not anti-reflective, unlike the armor glass on the S26 Ultra. And a dual nano lens coating for that bloody massive camera bump as well, just to help prevent scratching. And naturally, it's IP68 and IP69 dust, water, and spurt resistant. Now, secreted inside of that sizable screen, you've got yourself an ultrasonic fingerprint sensor, and it's an absolute banger. Hasn't let me down once the entire time I've been testing out the Find X9 Ultra. Recognises me every time, even when my hands are a wee bit mucky, so no issues at all on that front, and as you can see, super quick to act. And once you're in there, oh mommy, it's ColorOS version 16 slapped on top of the latest Android, with many years of OS updates and security patching to look forward to. As always, I just adore how light and nippy ColorOS feels. Lovely smooth animations and everything. What I don't adore particularly is the amount of crapware that OPPO has stuffed on here though. On an Ultra smartphone, I'd expect next to none, and yet this top row, 3 out of 4 of those, crapware that I most certainly did not install myself. You got all the regular bollocks like Facebook and LinkedIn, you got friggin' Temu stuffed on here for goodness sakes. Well, thankfully you can make it all piss off pretty easily. And ColorOS, as always, beautifully customizable with this gorgeous flux theme and shenanigans. You can customize quite a few of these delightful wee animations, and all the usual banging features like Zen Space, which is great if you just want the entire world to bugger off and leave you alone for a bit. And of course that excellent gaming mode to help keep you focused on the action, boost the performance, do whatever you need to do. Anyway, I've already banged on at great length about ColorOS 16, the best bits and any little quirks and stuff in my full ColorOS 16 tips and tricks guide, which is live right now. So go check that out if you want a bit of a deeper dive into the software. But a couple of wee bits that are worth pointing out here on the Find X9 Ultra, including the snap key over here on the left edge. As usual, this defaults to the Mind Space feature, so you can tap it at any time to capture a screenshot and save it to the Mind Space, where it is then molested by AI for key information. Or alternatively, you can press and hold the button to record a wee voice memo. You can then double tap that key in order to jump into Mind Space and search through everything you've saved. Alternatively, you can simply ask Gemini to search your Mind Space and find whatever it is you're after. How much does the spicy sandwich cost from Chick's Fried Chicken in Mind Space? Connecting to Mind Space.
The spicy sandwich from Chick's at Chick's Fried Chicken costs $8.5.
So yeah, plucked it straight out of the Edinburgh street food menu, which I saved to Mind Space, and tap on it and get straight into that menu in Mind Space if you fancy a closer look. And can I just say, that spicy sandwich was bloody lovely. And personally, your Uncle Spurt finds this Mind Space feature incredibly useful because, let's face it, my brain ain't what it used to be, and it never used to be particularly great to start with. However, if you're not a fan, you can customize the snap key to perform a different function instead, but you are rather limited in choice, to say the least. You've got a handful of other different options, including translation, fast loading the camera, which you can do with the actual camera button anyway, so that's kind of pointless. You can activate the torch, do not disturb, etc. That's pretty much it. It's just a massive shame you can't just set up your own wee macro and assign it to that button like you can even on a sodden iPhone, for instance. But at least I found the snap key was well positioned. I never accidentally poked it when I was trying to yank this thing out of my trousers or anything. Although clearly at some point while I was testing this thing, I must have had it resting in a holder or something, and that button must have been pressed in, because I've got about 80 voice memos, all from the same sort of time period. All of them just random snippets of me muttering to myself and occasionally having a small mental breakdown.
Don't you buffer, MacBook, don't you bloody...
The Ultra certainly doesn't disappoint when it comes to display tech either. You've got an almighty 6.82-inch Quad HD Plus panel here, although just like Samsung's Galaxy S26 Ultra, you will have to switch on the high-res mode to make the most of that supremely crispy panel. It's as smart as you'd imagine an Ultra display is. You've got full Dolby Vision and HDR10 streaming support in the likes of Netflix. And it's also perfectly bright for outdoor use, but it also dims all the way down to just a single nit when you are doom scrolling at 2 AM, which is frankly lovely. Bright poppy tones, certainly if you stick it in the vivid screen color mode. Wide viewing angles, everything you'd expect. You've also got 144Hz refresh rate for supported games. And it runs at a silky smooth 120Hz the rest of the time. You've got plenty of eye care shenanigans slapped on here as well to keep your peepers nice and comfortable. And this includes DC dimming when you're above 70 nits, as well as 2160Hz PWM dimming. And the Find X9 Ultra's stereo speaker setup is proper smashing as well. That bottom speaker slightly more powerful, but the balance ain't bad at all. Nice and loud when you max out that volume, but the clarity stays pretty strong. Vocals come through nice and cleanly. You got a respectable amount of bass in there. But of course, for enjoying some tunes at home as well as on the move, always stick in the Bluetooth buds, and the Bluetooth streaming has been basically flawless here on the Find X9 Ultra. Sometimes the range not quite as good as what I was expecting, but the actual streaming itself, you got the full codec support, everything you would expect, good bit of LDAC action, all of the aptexes, etc. And of course, the performance is as ultra as you would expect, as yes, it is the Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 stuffed in here, and that's backed by 16 gigs of RAM. So naturally, the everyday performance is simply wonderful, and if you are a gamer, well, good news. Whatever you're into, the OPPO Find X9 Ultra can handle it. As with every other smartphone with this beefcake chipset stuffed inside, the OPPO Find X9 Ultra did not struggle with massive, great open world gates like Wuthering Waves. Naturally chuck the graphics settings all the way up to the maximum levels, had it running at 60 frames per second, and that frame rate was steady as out. No noticeable dips at all, even when I was gaming for well over an hour. You do have a massive vapor chamber stuffed inside of the Find X9 Ultra, which keeps this blower nice and cool, even if you just simply cannot stop punch and wade things right in their chops with a variety of inappropriately attired anime lasses. And that is with the performance mode active, all of the various features toggled on. As for the battery tech, well, OPPO has managed to stuff a mighty 7050 mAh capacity silicon carbon cell inside of the Find X9 Ultra's girthy frame. So that's considerably bigger than last year's Ultra, if not quite the biggest around these days. We've had some absolute whoppers in 2026. But all the same, I found that the battery life here on the Find X9 Ultra wasn't quite as good as some rivals, including the Find X9 Pro, perhaps down to the fact that it's got that Snapdragon chipset stuffed inside rather than MediaTek's Dimensity. But all the same, I wouldn't say that the Find X9 Ultra ever let me down. On my most demanding day, for instance, travelling up to Edinburgh, I had about 7-8 hours of screen on time, plenty of music and video streaming, a good bit of camera action when I got to Edinburgh as well, a bit of video chatting here and there. And by the end of that particularly long day, which finished actually the following day at around 1 AM, I was only just getting down to the very dregs, the single digits of that battery. So yeah, even more demanding users should comfortably make it through a full day on a single charge of this thing, although don't expect to necessarily make it through a full weekend unless you go a bit easier on it, maybe don't rinse the camera tech so much. And as for more intensive stuff like gaming, well, again, not really a disappointment here. You'll get approximately 5.5 hours of Wuthering Waves action on a single charge on those peak graphics settings running at 60 frames per second with that performance mode switched on. So that's certainly above average, and you do have a battery bypass feature as usual as well. If you want to keep on gaming when this phone is almost fully drained, means you can plug it in, keep it juiced up, but the phone bypasses the battery charging while it's plugged in and you're gaming just to make sure it doesn't get too toasty. And even though it's a proper big battery, the Find X9 Ultra charges up nice and nipply as well. You've got 100 watt wired charging and 50 watt wireless charging support. And so my lovelies, let's hop, skip and jump our way merrily onto the only bit of the review that 90% of people probably actually care about, the camera tech. And what you've got here is a fresh new upgraded Hasselblad master camera system. That's 5 new cameras in total. One of these is OPPO's next gen true color camera, now with a wider field of view and improved dynamic range, just to ensure that the color accuracy is even better than before. And this works for video as well as photo capture. As for the main shooter here, well, that's a fresh 200 meg Lightyear 901 sensor. It's a sizable 1/1.12 inches with an f1.5 aperture. And what all that techie bollocks means is that night shots are simply stunning. Yes, subjects in motion will likely be a wee bit blurred, but my evening pics look stunningly close to what you'll see with your actual peepers. Got impressive levels of detail packed into every image. Low light portraits are absolutely smashing, and I struggled to find even a hint of noise in any of these photos, while colours appear nice and natural with richer tones successfully showing up. And that colour accuracy continues into the daytime as the Find X9 Ultra serves up beautiful photos with seemingly very little processing. This blower feels a lot less heavy-handed compared with Apple and Samsung's efforts, only slightly brightening your subject in scenes with strong contrast. You will still enjoy some natural look and shadows despite the subtle highlighting. And that focus is almost always completely dependable when you are shooting with this sensor, only failing me a couple of times out of well over 1,000 photos that I took. As for the 3x telephoto zoom, well, this now boasts a ruddy massive 200 megapixel sensor as well, 1/1.28 inch OmniVision. While meanwhile, the old 6x periscope zoom lens has been replaced now with a 10x periscope shooter. It's a 50 megapixel 1/2.75 inch JNL sensor co-developed with Samsung, and it's capable of up to 20 times lossless zoom. And this uses a quintuple prism reflection periscope structure, or QPRPS for short. And all you need to know is that it's a proper bit of smart-ass tech. This telephoto pair combine well to produce immensely crispy detail-packed snaps when you're shooting at a distance, albeit with a tonal shift when you do hit that 3x zoom level. Of course, switching the optical zoom of that secondary lens from 6 times to 10 times means that any snaps taken at around the sort of 8 to 9 times zoom level are losing out a wee bit. But 10 times and 20 times shots are among the absolute best I've ever seen spaffed out by something pocket-sized. At around 460mm or 20 times zoom level, I still got some incredible photos of living subjects. And it's not until around the 690mm or 30 times zoom level that I started to see softer results. Although the inevitable AI sharpening isn't too heavy-handed and generally works well for buildings and any stuff that isn't human. And both the 3 times and the 10 times telephoto shooters are fantastic options for grabbing lovely looking portrait snaps without having to get all up in your subject's grill. We're talking a glorious natural looking bokeh effect. And the Find X9 Ultra can also cope beautifully with motion, so no worries with pets and offspring. This thing only coughs out blurry results when the lighting is particularly cack. Now, if for some reason you reckon the OPPO Find X9 Ultra isn't quite good enough for your telephotography requirements, where you can purchase an extra teleconverter kit to slap on that back end, this gives you a 300mm lens to work with so you can get even closer to your subject, zoom in ruddy miles, though frankly, unless you're buggering off on Safari, not really sure why you would need that level of tech. And last up for that back end, you've got yourself a 50mm ultra-wide angle shooter using a Sony Lightyear 600 sensor, 1/1.95 inches, with a bit of autofocus. And this isn't as capable in powerful HDR situations with lots of light and dark, or at nighttime of course with that smaller sensor, but distortion is minimal and it's certainly handy when snapping big stuff as well as impressive vistas. Now for the Find X9 Ultra, OPPO has also updated its Hasselblad master mode. You've got the usual pro controls and everything stuffed in here so you can mess around with the white balance, etc, etc. You've also got a completely different imaging pipeline in the master mode compared with just the general photo mode. And so while OPPO's image processing is pretty subtle compared with some rivals, this completely basically cuts out that processing anyway. So photos will boast noticeably more natural tones and shadows, none of that AI bollocks basically, so you can get more creative if you fancy it. And you can switch up the image format from JPEG to JPEG Max, as well as RAW and RAW Max. On the video front, you've got full support now for 8K resolution shooting at 30 frames per second, but for my testing I generally left it at 4K 60 frames per second. That's with Dolby Vision switched on because you can freely swap between all of the rear sensors with this option. And I was certainly happy enough with the video that I captured using the Find X9 Ultra. In softer light you will see grain creeping into your video, especially with strong contrast, but in better light those visuals are crisp and colours pack a punch. Stabilisation is pretty decent too, maybe a wee bit mechanical, but it does the job. Now, if you shoot a lot of action footage, you want to slow it down in post, you can record at 4K at 120 frames per second with the main sensor and the 3 times telephoto shooter as well. As for audio, that's captured using a quad mic setup, which does a pretty decent job even at a distance. Although occasionally I did get some crackling on my audio as my fingers, I guess, must have been brushing over one of the mic holes. I didn't get any kind of on-screen prompt to warn me that I was buggering it up. If you are somewhere a bit gusty, then yes, all of that windy shenanigans will also sadly be captured. But anyway, if you want to see how the Find X9 Ultra fares as a vlogging machine, well certainly check out my spooky Edinburgh vlog over on the Spurt Hole channel. So I shot pretty much all of the B-roll on that using just the Find X9 Ultra with bugger all extra equipment. No massive honking grid gimbals or anything like that. And last up, around the front end of the OPPO Find X9 Ultra, you've got yourself a 50meg selfie shooter using a Samsung GN5 sensor. You can once again record 4K resolution footage at 60 frames per second with Dolby Vision HDR switched on. Absolutely stunning visuals, no doubt, even in quite ambient environments like this with strong backlighting and other shenanigans going on. And again, strong audio pickup. And there you have it, my lovelies. That in a delicious wee nutshell is the fresh new OPPO Find X9 Ultra. Hands down the best camera phone right now, and that's without slapping on the ridiculously penile teleconverter shenanigans. Sure, the battery life isn't quite as impressive as some rivals out there, but it's still good enough for even the most demanding users. While everything else is proper top notch, the performance, the media chops, etc. Still love that ColorOS, one of the best launchers out there for sure. And I still say that the OPPO Find X9 Pro is more than enough smartphone for the vast majority of people out there. But if you absolutely demand the most ridiculously versatile and super professional smartphone camera tech out there, well, job done. It certainly gets my spurt of approval. But of course has some big rivals, the likes of the Vivo X300 Ultra, which I recently reviewed. I'm hoping to do a full side-by-side of the OPPO Ultra, the Vivo Ultra, possibly the Xiaomi and the Samsung Ultras as well, depending on how masochistic I'm feeling. Let us know what you reckon of the OPPO Find X9 Ultra down in the comments below. Please do poke, subscribe and ding that notifications bell for more on the latest and greatest tech. And have yourselves a ruddy, wonderful rest of the week. Cheers everybody, love you!